It does look like someone has figured out a way to deploy Nexto into
I'm not
ranked.
the Viewbotter, guys. I'm not the Viewbotter. It's not me.
Yesterday, Psionics ended up banning pretty much all of these accounts.
Where do I even start? There have been a few events, let's say, in the past couple weeks in the Rocket League community. Honestly, each one of these are like so insane they could act as their own standalone video, but I decided to talk about just one of them in depth today, and we'll get to that later. There was a story about a popular Rocket League Twitch streamer that was accused of intentionally viewbotting and like finessing their way into success as a content creator, but that's pretty much settled down now. At first, people totally jumped on the hate train, trying to basically cancel this person immediately, but in the end, it came out that the evidence shown was just totally cherry-picked and poorly researched. And it turned out that this person was just completely innocent after all. It just kind of shows you why you shouldn't jump to conclusions, because pretty much everyone did it first, but now they all just look like fools now that the full truth is out. I've chosen not to go too in-depth into this story because I'm really just happy it's over. It involves a bunch of characters that I would have to mention by name if I were to tell it. And since it is pretty much over, I'd rather just kind of move on and leave it in the past. Another story that's not going to be the main topic of today is the Rocket League bot situation in ranked. This one is just insane. So pro players and high-level players in general have been talking about how they've noticed literal Rocket League bots in their ranked matches. Not as an insult, but like literally AI playing in ranked Rocket League online. You know how Nexto was like a big thing last year? Someone made a Rocket League bot last year that like is just as good as Grand Champions in the top 1% of players, and they called it Nexto. Well, kind of related to that, people have figured out ways to get bots to play for them in their online games. And you can easily tell it's a bot because they're on ball cam the entire game and they have like 0 millisecond reaction time and near perfect ground dribbling and flicks. I went and checked the replay files where people were claiming to play against bots and have to say, this is 100% a thing. Like, bots are invading ranked right now. It's still like a complete mystery to me as far as how this is happening. Like, I don't know if this is actually Nexto that they figured out how to move them into ranked matches, or if someone created their own machine learning bot and now they're kind of selling it for other people to use. I really have no idea, but I do know that Psionics is trying really hard to crack down on this, so I expect them to do something about it soon. I find it interesting that the bots like purposely delay the kickoff no matter where they spawn, and then they just use their like perfect instant reaction time to get an unfair dunk. It's a kickoff strategy that only a bot could pull off, so that's already like a telltale sign. I don't want to dive too deep into this either though, because it's still an ongoing problem that hasn't been resolved, and I don't really want to be responsible for promoting it further if it's still an issue. But I'll probably talk about the whole thing later on, like from start to finish, if it does end up being stopped by Psionics. The actual story of today's video has to do with another set of bans that occurred at the start of this year. You guys probably heard about how like a bunch of freestylers got banned just out of nowhere a few months ago. Well, this is very similar to that and could honestly have an even bigger impact based on which community it was this time that was shut down. On January 3rd, 2023, a familiar wave of bans happened across another one of Rocket League's communities. In the evening, around 8 p.m. in North America, a bunch of players at the same time received this message upon launching the game. Only, it's slightly different from the one given to freestylers a few months back. You have been banned. This ban is permanent. Literally, that's it. No explanation, no nothing. And of course, at that point, these players are completely restricted from doing anything online. What's especially terrifying about this is that a majority of the players that were banned were bubble pro players. People on the cusp of becoming full-on pros in the RLCS, but just not quite there yet. So these players who've spent thousands of hours grinding the game competitively are suddenly being completely banned without explanation. A full hard stop to their path to pro. This is super brutal, as you can see, but still at this moment, it's unknown why these players were banned yet. And as expected, same as last time, there is a reason why this is happening to a specific group of players. It turns out that the pattern with all these players that were banned was that they each had something called a trade-locked alpha boost on their account. There's nothing wrong with that on its own, but the means that they got it from is where the real problem is. For those that don't know, alpha boost is one of the most expensive items in Rocket League by a long shot. Right now, they're going for like $5,000, I think, but I've seen them go for even higher. Say what you want about the price of pixels on a screen, but the point is this item is insanely expensive. And because of that, there's bound to be some bad actors that try to exploit that for personal gain. People like hackers and scammers. But the bans we're talking about today actually don't fall into either of those categories. These bans actually have to do with exploiting Rocket League's support system. Before I explain this process that got people banned, I want to put a little disclaimer saying that this is just the story that makes the most sense to me based on putting the pieces together. There could be some inaccurate details or aspects of it that aren't perfect, but I do think it's what makes the most sense. And of course, this exploitation method no longer works, in case it wasn't obvious. Anyway, here's how I think these people got banned. People getting scammed in Rocket League is unfortunately a common occurrence. There's all sorts of methods that scammers use that people fall for, but the point is it happens often enough that Psyonix has a common policy in place for it. They don't just say sucks to suck to the victims of scammers and then just move on. Instead, if someone gets scammed and loses their items, that person can create a support ticket on the website explaining the situation, and Psyonix will actually give that person their items back. Only thing is, they'll give it back to them on tradelock. So it'll have this icon in the corner. Basically, you can't trade that item anymore. You can still equip it and use it, but it is locked to your specific account. As far as I know, that's the policy that has been set in place, at least until now. And there's a clever way that someone or multiple people have figured out how to exploit that. It starts with buying a real Alpha Boost for 5 grand or however much it costs. Basically, they find someone who does have Alpha Boost and they're like, hey, I'll give you $5,000 for that Alpha Boost. And the guy's like, oh, sure. So the transaction happens and now you've got this bad actor with a real tradable Alpha Boost on his account. What they do at this point is trade that Alpha Boost to another account that they also own. So now they've got one account that has a real Alpha Boost on it and another account that used to have the real Alpha Boost on it. What they can now do on behalf of the first account is contact support, create a ticket saying, hey, I just got scammed. Can you help me out in any way? So Psyonix will then confirm that that account used to have Alpha Boost on it, which it did. And then they'll put a new Alpha Boost on that account, but make sure it's trade locked. But here's where I think the exploit comes from. The thing is, I'm pretty sure that original real Alpha Boost that was traded over still exists on that new account. So in a way, they've duplicated the item with the help of Psyonix. And now they can sell that account with the trade locked Alpha Boost on it for a discounted price, let's say like $1,000. And then someone else comes along like, oh yeah, sure, I'll buy that. So they do, and now this new guy has the account with the trade lock Alpha Boost. And the convenient thing about that is this new guy can just link that Epic Games account that he just bought with his already existing account that he uses anyway. That way they can just play on their already existing account, but they'll have the trade locked Alpha Boost on it. Again, this is just my understanding of it, so there's a chance I could be way off on this, but you can pretty much see how that ecosystem works. And that original bad actor in the first place can essentially repeat this process over and over and basically print Alpha Boost accounts and just keep selling them to make a ton of money. It's pretty clever, but obviously way against terms of service. This was the first time I heard about this, so I have no idea how long this has been going on, but this is what these bubble players were banned for. They were the ones purchasing these accounts and linking it to their own. And obviously purchasing accounts for any reason is against TOS as well. But the surprising thing about this is that the players who were banned noticed that if they just unlink their Epic Games account that they had purchased with the Alpha Boost on it, they'll actually be unbanned and can resume playing again just without the Alpha Boost. That's pretty interesting. I don't know if Psyonix did that on purpose or not, but at the end of the day, all these players lost was the $1,000 or whatever they paid for that new account. So at first glance, that seems to be the whole story right there. Psyonix finally took action on this foul play that has been going on for who knows how long, and it ended with the players not actually being permabanned, but still with a pretty solid punishment. But this is where it gets kind of weird, because if you look deeper, it actually doesn't end there, and it's not that simple. About a day later, there was a second wave of bans that hit those same players, and this is where the stories get pretty inconsistent. For some people, in this second wave, their main original account was also banned permanently, even after unlinking. So now they really can't play at all. It's a legit permaban. But meanwhile, for some others, they're still fine. Some say this second wave went right by them without getting banned. So it quickly spreads into this huge web of a bunch of people who are guilty of the same thing, but some of them were able to avoid full punishment, while others were legitimately permanently banned from Rocket League. Not to mention the fact that there's still no official statement from Psyonix about this whole thing. You'd think they learned from last time that when you send out a new giant wave of bans on some of your most active community members, you should put out a statement along with it so you don't just start a riot. But apparently not, because as of me recording this video, they still haven't said anything. It's also really sad to see because apparently there are some people who were caught in the crossfire of all this who didn't even do anything wrong. I spoke with one person in particular who says he's never bought any accounts or done any weird account linking that could be flagged as suspicious. He's only ever had Alpha Boost once, and he borrowed it for an hour. That's it. And still, he was among those who were permanently banned for some reason. The only reasoning I can imagine for this is that that Alpha Boost he borrowed could have been used for this whole duplication thing later on, and then Psyonix just banned everyone who had their hands on it at any point. It would make sense because the person he borrowed it from is also banned permanently, and there's a few others on his same boat. People who say they've never bought any accounts or anything, they just owned an Alpha Boost at one point, and now they're permanently banned too. Another thing to think about is that there were a ton of bubble players that fell into these bans. For those that I talked to, it seemed about 15% of the bubble players in North America fell into this category. Most of them didn't talk about it publicly, so I don't want to name drop, but you'd be surprised if I were to start listing off names. It's definitely not a small amount of people, let's say that. Apparently, buying Alpha Boost accounts was a common thing for these players, at least in North America. When it comes to RLCS, since that's what these players are grinding for, who knows if Psyonix is even going to allow them to compete if they qualify. Obviously, you're not technically allowed to create new accounts after being banned, so would these players just be auto-DQ'd if they ended up qualifying for an RLCS event? All these questions, I just don't have an answer to, and I feel like we won't know until Psyonix either takes action and bans one of these people from RLCS, or if they come out with a statement about it, which, let's be real, that's probably not going to happen. I hope dearly that this all gets resolved soon. It's safe to say that the original method of duplicating Alpha Boost is taken care of, which is great. I feel like if you were to try it now, it would just be like a speed run to getting permabanned. What I really hope is that Psyonix at least gets those false bans sorted out. So if there's anyone at Psyonix watching this, please make that a priority. As a normal reminder, please remain respectful in the comments. I know you guys like to get riled up with these sorts of videos, but at the same time, I do want to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share. Other than that, subscribe for more videos just like these. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one.
Some true intentions, not plastic. It feel like every word building up my casket. Swim through the mentions, blocking up the traffic, and I ain't wanna talk to a actress. I can see the low stand.